Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Crystal Confab. Today we're diving into a crystal from one of my favourite families. It's the Beryl family. And when I think of the Beryl family, I think of a whole bunch of old women sitting around knitting called Beryl. But this crystal is far cooler than those lovely old women, who I'm sure are delightful. Today we're looking at blue beryl, which is much better known as aquamarine, the crystal of the ocean. I'm joined by Kyle and Nicholas today, and we're going to have an amazing confab about why this crystal is absolutely amazing. But Nicholas, I wanted to ask you first of all, tell us a little bit about this Beryl family.
Yeah, so I know we touched on this in our Emerald episode, and it's not a secret that I love Emerald and all of its relatives. Beryls are beryllium aluminum silicates. We tend to find most beryls, with the exception of our emeralds, in geologic environments like pegmatites. These are going to allow for pretty large crystals to form. We've got a museum up in the Northeast here in the United States that has I think something like an 800-pound aquamarine crystal just hanging out on its back porch if you go visit. So the thing about pegmatites is they cool very, very slowly, and it allows these crystals to form gradually over time and build up and get huge. We have in aquamarine this beautiful color ode to traces of iron, which substitutes in there and can give us anywhere from like our faint sky blues all the way to our kind of rich green colors, both aquamarine, just different concentrations of iron and other stuff. And it is one of the more abundant gem varieties of beryl, especially when we compare it to our morganites and heliodores and emeralds and red beryls. Thankfully, that means we can have lots of it in our collection.
Now, correct me if
Exactly.
I'm. Oh, sorry, Carl. I was just going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are other blue beryls as well. Is that correct? They're just a little bit more rare?
Yeah, we've got mashish or mashiche, which is super intensely blue and often helped a little bit to get there, but its color is far less stable than aquamarine. Just ordinary incandescent lighting in our home is enough to cause it to fade. Plus, when we get that UV light from direct sun, they get quite pale, more quickly than we'd anticipate.
And
And
sorry,
then there's
Kyle, you
like
were going to say?
the Voroboyevite, the alkali blue beryl. It's not technically, there's like the whole discourse as whether or not it's technically a part of the family, right?
Yeah, so that one's a cesium-rich mineral, and it is still, at least as of the last time I read about it, is still classified as beryl, beryllium aluminum silicate, but we've got some cesium that's in there. Um, and they can also, Vorobievite can also be kind of pinkish, depending on what trace elements are in there. I'm imagining some manganese is at play for that. Um, but a lot of the Vorbievite, like other barrels, is colorless, white, gray, somewhere in that range.
Fascinating, fascinating. I love it. I think aquamarine is such a important stone for all of us. And if we're all happy, I'm going to dive into why I love it so much. And for me, it's the simplicity of its connection to water, right? Like aquamarine, water. We have these beautiful shades of blue that we find and see. This is a really beautiful piece that comes from West Australians goldfields. I recently acquired a couple of tiny, cute little ones from Queensland. Like, I just adore it. I literally gathered all of my aquamarines up to do my preparation, put them in my hand, and it immediately went cold. Like, it immediately cooled off. And I'm hot. I run hot all the time. And it was just like this, putting your hand into like a tub of cold water or under some running water. And for me, it does allow us to tap into water at its source, water within us, water on this planet, and it's all of its variations from its simplicity through to its complexity, right? We're 70+% water. That's a lot. We sweat, we bleed, we have many other bodily functions that involve liquid. We get rained on, we need water to drink. We have it to survive, and without it on this planet, we don't live, right? So if you're neglecting the water element in your life, please call upon some aquamarine because it will tell you where you need it. I actually need to have a nice long bath and refresh myself. Maybe I need to go to the gym or sauna and sweat it out a little bit. Maybe I'm holding on to a little bit too much and I need to recalibrate and balance the physical element of the water within me. Then we take the next step and we go, the emotions, right? The feelings within us, right? Water can so tap into our feelings and our emotional source. And we can hold emotions in like a dam. We can hold them in like a cloud waiting to break. And maybe we need to release the dam. Maybe we need to let the cloud break. Maybe we need to rain and cry and release, right? The water element that aquamarine brings is like clarity in just letting go, in release, in feeling, in whatever the water within you really needs. For me, I have talked about the fact that I have a stellium of Sagittarius, 5 placements. Yes, I also have 3 placements in Scorpio. So I also have a lot of water that I need to tap into correctly, that for a long time I didn't. And what aquamarine has taught me a lot about is allowing myself to feel my feelings, allowing myself to be comfortable being emotive, allowing myself to not damn things and hold things in and actually just let it go and let it flow, let it be easy. It's actually more complicated when you repress and when you hold things in and when you like stifle it, right? There can be more damage caused when the storm is bigger and it takes longer to break, the dam flooding, right? Water can be very destructive when it's too much, when it's overflow, when it all comes out of nowhere. But when, you know, we have constant rain that's just coming in and out, the river is flowing easy, we can live by it, we can live easily, we can be more comfortable. And it's the same with the water within us. We need to kind of tap into allowing ourselves to feel, allowing ourselves to let the rain come when it comes, be sad when you need to feel sad and let it go, right? Be frustrated and then let it go. Don't allow it to hold down within you. I've talked about this in the past. I didn't let myself cry at all, yell, get angry, have any extreme of emotions for a long time. And I created a tumor the size of my fist in my back. And like that physical representation of all that emotion being held in was like the dam breaking. I hit this point where it was like I couldn't control my emotions for a couple of years. It was like I cried at everything and I found myself really uncomfortable. And that's often the way. It's very uncomfortable when all of this water comes at once. It's like, quick, bunker down. But we have to let it flow through us. We have to let it come out in some way, shape, or form. And it's important to tap into that. It is simple and complex. Aquamarine has this ability to be so easy. Just take a bath. Just go to the beach. Just take it easy. And then let's go deeper. What about the emotions? What about all of your feelings? What about all of that stuff that's hidden beneath the surface? Because there's so much water hidden beneath the surface, right? There's all these artesian basins that we tap into, right? There is so much water and so much we don't know about the depths of the oceans. We know more about space than we do about the depths of our oceans, right? We know more about thinking and being philosophical and like exploring intelligence than we do about our feelings. I think as humans, we know less about what drives our emotional center than our thought center. And I think aquamarine is that like, it's truth, it's communication, it's calm, it's water, but it's like, what are you feeling and why? Where is it all coming from? How can we find that balance? Let it flow downhill to the deepest point, right? Gravity will always control water. So let the gravity around you, the situation, let it flow. Go downhill, be like a waterfall, be effortless. Let your aquamarine, little dragon and skull, drive you towards being fluid, more easy. Let yourself feel and have a cry if that's what's happening in your life. Let yourself be in whatever is happening, especially when we go through phases like full moons and new moons, retrogrades, these waves where things happen, waves of grief, waves of frustration, things that hit us. let the wave pass by. Aquamarine actually gives you anchorage so that it can flow either past you and through you, or so you can flow with it and go elsewhere. Whatever is necessary, Aquamarine will help you with that. And I absolutely adore the way it has our beautiful hexagonal shape, right? It has that Beryl strength. It has that structure. It has that solidity whilst still being fluid. So it helps us to add a little bit of structure, a little bit of solidity whilst still having fluidity. I'll be able to get there one day. The irony of not being able to communicate clearly with Aquamarine in my hand is not lost on me.
Just what you're saying there, I'm really glad you brought up the fact that Beryls and Aquamarine do grow in these hexagonal rods. So it almost is, 6 is quite in numerology, quite a balancing, harmonizing number. And the fact that they do grow in these rods. And I always feel like the energy kind of ebbs and flows up and down the crystal, just like any body of water will find harmony, in its container. It's almost as though it works in that way, and that's kind of how the crystals form dictates a bit about the crystal's energy that you've been talking about, doesn't it?
I totally agree. We've talked about and touched on this in the past, is that shape and structure and formation of the crystal has so much influence over its energy. This is one of my favorite pieces that's from Namibia. It's from the Orongo region, and it shows the beautiful scientific difference between aquamarine and heliodor. Like, this is two ions of ions of iron, and then it becomes more intense at the top. Heliodor has the 3, so it's that yellow color comes out. It's amazing. It's so different. We touched on it a little bit before, but it has this softness and strength, and I think we all could do with a little bit of that. Like, we shouldn't be stepped on, but we should also have compassion and softness, and go with the flow a little bit and take things easier.
I'd just like to take us back on a bit of a tangent, because I know some people listen to this podcast and probably don't have as much experience with the kind of structural and formation of crystals, and they're obviously, hopefully, learning each week as we have a confab. But I'll get you guys to elaborate if you could. So Beryls, as a family group, they all have the same structure, but the difference between an emerald or an aquamarine or a heliodor or a morganite is basically other minerals will kind of soak in and stain or color the crystal. Is that right? So that the Beryls will have the same shape, but the colors come from other things in the environment. Yeah, is that right, Nicholas?
It's close. So, in the case of Beryl, like with quartz, what we have is a single mineral species. Chemically, they're more alike than they are not alike, and we have a tiny amount of what's called ionic substitution. So in the complete structure that is whatever that massive Beryl might be, a few stray molecules of one thing, usually in this case with the Beryl, it's going to be the aluminum substituting for something else. A different ion kind of pops in for an occasional ion of aluminum in its structure, or we might get some interstitial minerals, we might get some other things that show up, but it's not so much they soak in, but it substitutes as it grows. So if there's an abundance of iron in its makeup, then we're going to get something in the aquamarine to heliodor range of the spectrum, depending on the valence, how many free electrons there are in that iron. If we've got manganese substituting in there, then we're going to get our pinks to reds. If we have vanadium, it's going to be a kind of blue-green. If we've got chromium with or without iron, then we're going to get our emerald green, and so on and so forth. So I had a colleague once, I want to say it might have been a college professor, describe exactly how little difference there is, and they used clear quartz versus amethyst as the example. And this is an approximation. Someone didn't sit there and count out the molar mass of these two things, but let's say you had like a 1 foot, a 30 centimeter cube of quartz, totally flawless, optically clear quartz, and you wanted to turn it into amethyst. The amount of iron you'd need is probably less than the number of iron molecules in the tip of a ballpoint pen. So it's not very, very, very much. Now, of course, there could be more, and it could be hypersaturated, but there could also be less, and it might still be appreciably violet. And it's kind of similar in the case of our barrels. It's a very small amount of one, usually metal, substituting for another metal in the crystal structure.
Wow, the precision of Mother Earth. And what I find really interesting, Kyle, about the piece you were showing, and I think I've got another piece from the same collection, is as the crystal was growing, obviously there was something in the environment that was offering that blue color as it was growing. And then I'm guessing something would have happened geologically to then suddenly there was abundance for the yellow to come in there as it grew more. Would that be correct?
It would be more about like the the crystal just having a little bit more space, or the concentration of the iron, I think, in the mother liquid being more intense as it like shrinks. Like within,
Mm,
it could be within a pocket, and sort of you imagine this liquid kind of going down as the crystal goes up. You know, the iron has become more concentrated, like cordial,
that
over the
makes
course of
sense.
time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I love what you were sharing about the emotional and the watery aspects of aquamarine. Of course, with the name and the color, we do immediately think of the water. One thing I love about aquamarine is it's said to be the favorite crystal of the merfolk or the mermaids and the mermen type of thing. And there are little rituals you can do. Sometimes we all have different ways of working with our emotions. And what I love about the merfolk is that they are a mythical embodiment of the water element or of the emotional element. And sometimes, if we can't connect with the emotions within ourselves, listening to some type of guide like a mermaid or a merman can actually give us that guidance on, emotional intelligence and how our emotions can be they can be our employee, not our boss in that type of way as well. There are simple little rituals you can do, like going near a body of water, like the ocean, with your aquamarine. Apparently, mermaids like something sparkly, so in a sparkly crystal or something else, and just asking for that guidance and connecting. Like you said, Kyle, we're about 70% water. The Earth is 71% water, or covered in oceans. Connecting with that water within us and around us, and feeling that equilibrium as well, can be really quite powerful as well. I know also with all the things that are happening in our personal lives and on a bigger scale, that can be pretty emotionally destabilizing sometimes, and sometimes the water within can feel like it's more going through a pretty rapid storm. And I think this is a great crystal to help with that. But also, I know that there's a new documentary out at the moment called, I believe, called Oceans by David Attenborough, I think, which is pretty heartbreaking about what we're doing to the oceans in that way as well. Will sitting with a crystal and visualizing, healing of the oceans, or healing, helping whales or dolphins or something like that, is that going to shift the whole world? Maybe not. But at the same time, I think that kind of, if we focus our energy on that, that does create a ripple effect, which then can have, you know, can have far-reaching consequences beyond what we possibly imagine. So I know, Kyle, you're a bit of a grid maker. I would love to know how many grids are actually throughout your house. But I think we can make grids as well for like protection of the oceans, or connecting to the oceans, or connecting to the merfolk as well. Would you agree with that, Carl?
You could make a grid for anything if your intention's in it, right? And the thing is, when you add minerals, crystals, stones that have a direction of that energy as well, you are then going to focus it in a better way. For me, I have all my barrels together. They all hang out in one family, in one sort of multi-layered grid. But I have, in many times in the past, created nature directed, ocean directed, sort of more planetary directed grids, and aquamarine. The barrels will always be a part of that, because for me, all of the barrels connect to all of the elements, right?
Yeah.
So I love to bring them in any way I can.
And I guess with grids as well, a lot of the time we kind of go, we have our crystals, but then we put some clear quartz points because they're very directional, aren't they? That, they're either sending something out or bringing something in. Whereas we could possibly, okay, when it's relevant, put aquamarine pieces in there to bring that more ebb and flow and balancing nature rather than, maybe we're looking for a relationship harmony or a family harmony or that kind of thing. Instead of sending out the harmony with the crystals, we might want to bring that ebb and flow. Do you reckon?
I think it's like putting a spirit level onto a situation, right? It's going to go, okay, it needs to go this way or that way. And if you can get something that's been carved and pointed, you can make it directional like a clear quartz point. But I think it will give you that, do I need more of this or less of this? More or less. I think it's going to give you that ability to find the balance, even if you don't have it.
I'm wondering, just going off on a bit of a tangent now, um, you know, relationships where there could be some form of narcissism and that type of thing, where we're kind of like, how do we handle that? And, in narcissistic relationships, sometimes you're wondering, am I the problem? Are they the problem? And this may even be able to take some of the emotion out, equalize the emotion, and allow us to see things as they truly are, rather than just kind of being flooded with maybe I'm the one doing all the wrong things.
I think Aquamarine is very powerful for finding the truth of the matter, right? And finding our ability to, like, I find Aquamarine, it doesn't need to yell to get its point across. And it helps us to do the same thing. Like, I'm not going to get into an argument. I'm not going to waste my voice because I know it's just going to be wasted because all you're going to do is debate or manipulate or whatever. Like, it actually helps us to use words more wisely and with more, being more deliberate about how we choose our words.
Yeah, yeah, true. Now, Nicholas, I think you love aquamarine for its more like for you, it's quite a spiritual crystal, isn't it?
It is. This is one of probably the most profound crystal allies, teachers, mentors I've had in my life, and I've gone through like layer upon layer of work with it. And one of the things that amazes me about Aqua is its ability to reach the core of a situation. And my understanding of how it does this has kind of evolved over time with, different practices and all kinds of other elements in there. But to really get a clear understanding of this, I have to kind of set the stage with two things. Some X-ray crystallography and then some like esoteric teachings that have found their way into my practice. And I'm going to start with that bit first. So in some of the gemstone energy medicine and gem therapy training that I've had, one of the concepts that we discuss is the nature of a spiritual blueprint, the kind of platonic ideal or template or archetype out of which everything is built. And you can almost think of it as a kind of set of spiritual instructions that act as the code underlying everything in the universe. So every rock, every blade of grass, every mountain, everything has its own blueprint. That also applies to us at every level of organization, from our whole being, which is bigger than our body and our mind. It's everything and all the emanations and iterations of us, as well as the tiniest bits. Every cell has its own blueprint, every molecule of every cell, every so on and so forth. And they kind of fit together like nesting dolls to paint the picture of who we are. And the thing is, our blueprints don't inherently encode for failure or loss or pain or all of the icky stuff. It's like what the acorn is to the oak tree. The potential is there for this magnificent being to emerge with the right conditions. So the conditions around us affect whether or not we can access what's written in that spiritual blueprint. And there are certain crystals that kind of interface with it, we'll say, more effectively than others. And aquamarine is one of the gems that I find to be in the greatest resonance with it. And there's a clue to this in aquamarine's makeup, which was first revealed in like the early 20th century by the process of X-ray diffraction, which led to the science of X-ray crystallography. The first Nobel Prize given to this field was given away in 1915 to an Aussie, actually. And Beryl was one of the first materials that they used for this. So to perform X-ray crystallography, a small sample of a mineral is used, and a concentrated beam of the particles, the photons of X-rays are kind of blasted at it, and it creates this diffusion or diffraction pattern that reveals the makeup, the arrangement of its internal molecules. And in Beryl, we see this arrangement that so almost perfectly resembles the flower of life that it is astonishing. And for those who might not know what the flower of life looks like, it's what I've got on my mug here. That was intentional. It's these overlapping circles. Maybe in a couple weeks we'll talk more about overlapping circles with a different topic, but it is thought to be in some kind of Western esoteric traditions and modern New Age traditions to be the kind of geometric template out of which all things are birthed. All forms, all structures, all geometries can be found somehow by calculating the distance between and the overlap and the relationship of these figures. So if Beryl has in its makeup something that is perfectly overlaid with the flower of life, then it kind of represents that same template, that same blueprint within all of us. And it has the ability, kind of drawing from this watery imagery that Kyle was using, to help us go with the flow. The reason why we kind of get stuck, we lose sight of what's written in that spiritual template, that idealized set of information from which we should be drawing inspiration for our life, is that we wander off topic. We get lost in the woods, so to speak. And that blueprint works in two different ways. In one way, it's kind of like the roadmap. So as real life happens, we get smudges on that map and we can't read it very effectively. But simultaneously, it's almost like the rudder on our ship. And as we get certain ingrained beliefs and behaviors and other circumstances in our lives, it's like having too many barnacles on the rudder. We can't move it if it gets too encrusted, and you end up, going in circles because the rudder's turned in one direction. And that's only useful if your goal is to go around in circles, but you can't explore the world, you can't navigate, you can't adjust where you're headed unless we can consult the map and read it accurately and navigate according to that map. And the blueprint kind of works in both ways. And the way Aquamarine works for us is kind of twofold. On the one hand, it has this cleansing quality that Kyle alluded to. It has this really watery energy that we can use to purge, to release. It is one of my favorite stones for releasing outdated beliefs and ideas and concepts and just stale energies from our lives. And on the other end of that, when we remove the encrusted barnacles and we dust off the map and there are no more smudges on it, it reveals the innate light that is within the blueprint, and we can allow that light to guide us. Similar to how Emerald is kind of an illuminator, a light bringer, so are all the other members of this family. They kind of direct that light and inform it in different ways. And for me, Aquamarine, there's an expression that we use in gemstone energy medicine called energetic liquidity. And it's based on this idea that everything with form exists in an energetic state as well as in a manifest state. So if we're talking subatomic particles, this makes sense. You can look at a photon as a wave that has no mass and moves freely, or as a particle with mass that is bound by a different set of laws. And of course, a photon is both of these things, but usually not simultaneously. It kind of goes back and forth between the two. And therefore, every part of us metaphorically undergoes the same transitional phase. When we get stuck in the manifest state, that's like the rudder with all the barnacles on it. We can't change direction. We can't go back into that liquid, that unmanifest or pre-manifest state to consult what's written in the blueprint, because it's not here in the material. If someone could just hand us a little manual when we are born that we take with us throughout life that gives us all the secrets, that'd be great. But we can't. So all of the bits we're made out of, not just in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense, it's almost like they need to pop into the other room to read what is on that blueprint and then come back to 3D to use that information. And when we get in this rigid crystalline state, we can't do that. So the sense of energetic liquidity that aquamarine brings allows us to flow between the manifest and the pre-manifest, the encrusted and crystalline, the 3D, the dense, and the purely energetic and luminous, because we are both of these things simultaneously, and we have a tendency to forget about one of them as we go. And this connection that aquamarine has to water and liquid is also hinted at in something really unusual about its crystallography. So beryls are what we call cyclosilicates. They form ring-like structures of silica with all the other stuff attached to them. And our cyclosilicates can take two general forms. They can be spongiform, which means that those little rings don't line up. So chrysocolla, which we'll be talking about soon, um, is is an example of a spongiform cyclosilicate. But when we talk about beryls and tourmalines, they're great examples of columnar cyclosilicates where all the rings stack up. And so they form these kind of submicroscopic channels, literally just barely big enough for a molecule to squeeze through them. And in the case of beryl, although its chemical formula is beryllium, aluminum, silicate, that's it. Nothing else in there. They almost always have free water molecules inside the channels of those ring structures. And we only know this through far more advanced crystallography than we had 100 plus years ago when X-ray diffraction was a new technique. And so this water molecule is not attached to the crystal structure. It's not part of its chemical formula. It is non-essential. And that also gives it permission to flow freely through that crystal structure along the length, along that central axis of it. And it reminds us that even in the dense material bodies and the hard reality of 3D life all around us, there is a hidden light, a hidden flexibility, a hidden quality that is like unto water. And we just have to learn how to access that hidden potential in all things. And aquamarine becomes the illuminator that shows us the way. And for that reason, I just love working with it, whether I'm wearing it as jewelry or popping a piece in my pocket. I'm very fond of aqua in combination with other minerals. So, from Namibia, we get, wonderful examples of aquamarine with black tourmaline and feldspars and quartzes. I have this one piece that looks like it is broken. This is actually in situ damage, so it formed with a termination and broke. We would need the right lighting, but over the top of this is actually a layer of transparent opal, which glows under ultraviolet light, which shows us that that happened quite a long time ago. But we've got all of these little aquas, and maybe not so little aquas, that one's as big as my thumb, growing through it, popping out of it, kind of all through there. Another one that I really love is this one from Afghanistan that has sparkling metallic iridescent tantalite. And the lighting doesn't show it off, but bright orange spessartine garnets inside it as well. And I just love seeing how it plays so nicely with some of these other minerals.
So
Wow, Nicholas, I
amazing.
want to I want to dig a little bit deeper into something you said about halfway through, where you're talking about that aquamarine is really cleansing, which I think we'd all agree with. When people think of cleansing crystals, crystals like selenite are the kind of, oh, we grab that and we place it around and it's a great energy cleanser. When would you reach for aquamarine, and how would you use aquamarine for that kind of cleansing effect? Because I think that's something that a lot of people reach for crystals for, is to let go of unwanted energy.
I love wearing aquamarine to kind of cleanse the psyche, to cleanse the heart mind, to cleanse the light of the soul, because we get it on a continuous basis. Beads are probably the most affordable way to do this, plus they can encircle us. And that's a wonderful option. As long as your aquamarine is free from treatments and free from accessory minerals that don't play nicely with water, you could also make some aquamarine water with this. This is a practice that we do in gem therapy. And if you're not sure whether or not your aquamarine meets those requirements, just make an elixir via an indirect method. It's slightly different mechanics. But my favorite thing to do with a strand of chips like this is I'll have two pitchers, I'll fill one with water, and I will pour it over the beads. And so that water is flowing over and pass it back and forth. The greater the number of passes, the more intense its effects are going to be. I could add that to the bath. I could use it to cleanse my space. One of the things that I'll do with that is you can fill a nice bowl. It could be a, beautiful cut crystal bowl. It could just be a piece of Pyrex from the kitchen, and fill that with that charged aquamarine water and leave it in the space you want it to cleanse. As that water slowly evaporates, its energy is also going to kind of permeate the space. A little pinch of sea salt in there can enhance the benefits. You could use that resulting infusion to also cleanse your other crystals, again, supposing that they are water safe. So yeah, there's just so many options. And I think people reach for selenite, one, because it's plentiful and inexpensive, and two, the internet says we should use it to cleanse things. But my experience with something like satin spar, because of how soft and fragile and porous it is that it actually needs very frequent cleansing on its own. It's like a sponge. And if we don't wash the sponge after we finish washing our dishes, the next time we go to wash our dishes, they won't get clean. So no matter what crystal we're using, it still requires cleansing, especially if we are using it to clean up other messes. I mean, just imagine you had a towel that you used to wipe the counter every day and you never washed said towel. Your counters would be disgusting. They would have colonies of bacteria and other things. And energetically, that's kind of what we're doing when we never cleanse our selenite. We're never giving it a chance to breathe. We're never giving it an opportunity to reset. It's always trying to dissipate other stuff, and then it gets kind of clogged up because aquamarine moves energies so quickly and is far less porous. It might not need the same degree of intensity of cleansing, but it's also, being a pretty durable mineral, it's very easy to just put under the tap with a little bit of running water, and you've got a quick cleanse.
I wonder as well, just listening to you talk about the cleansing as well, where selenite is just kind of like it just gets rid of it. Do you mean it's like deals with the problem? Whereas what we've been talking about with aquamarine, that does help with a bit of emotional intelligence as well. Whether often we want to get rid of something, we want something to stop, or whatever that may be, and a lot of the time we're focused on what the problem is. But I wonder if working with aquamarine to help to alleviate and wash away the issue may also bring like everything that ebb must then flow back. Maybe it helps us to go, well, why do I need to get rid of these people being nasty to me? Am I putting myself in an environment where I'm hanging out with people that are nasty to me, or it kind of brings that responsibility back to the cleansing as well of why has this happened in the first place rather than just let's get rid of it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. This is a topic I was just having a conversation about in a workshop I taught. If we change the external energies, but not the underlying cause for them, we are putting a band-aid on a more serious situation, and it never gets better. Like superficially things look okay, but it doesn't change. It's the same as like when we try to energetically cut cords but don't change the relationship dynamics. We don't enforce healthy boundaries. We don't change the circumstances. What's going to happen? The same cords reform because there is nothing changing. And the same is true when we're talking about our kind of spiritual hygiene in terms of the social dynamic of the energies we want to cleanse. If we use something as a quick fix, I'm cleansing my energy when I come into my space. Great. I'm not carrying the stuff stuck to the exterior of my aura into my space for very long. But what about my role in this? What about the energies that I'm generating from this experience? Because it's a truth that is hard to swallow. A lot of the problems in our life are our fault, at least in part. We at least contribute to them in some way. I'm not saying everything is always your fault, although you meet some people and that might be the answer. Um, and what Aquamarine does is it helps us understand the role that we play in this by comparing the notes of where we are to that idealized story that's written into our blueprint. We go, oh, I took a wrong turn back there. And we can head back, find the right way out, and enter a new chapter of our lives. And then it kind of treats things at the cause level instead of at the symptom level.
And I'm so glad we're talking about this right now, especially as we head into July, because there's a couple of things that are happening astrologically that are really going to allow us to gain those lessons and gain those insights as well. So the first retrograde I want to talk about is happening early in July, and this is Neptune retrograde. Now, when Neptune is going direct, when it's not in a retrograde direction, basically it's considered to be the higher octave or the higher vibration, you might describe it as, of Venus. So whereas Venus is to do with love and beauty, Neptune is to do with aesthetics. So it does govern things like the arts and photography and performing and, all that type of thing. But I kind of feel that overall Neptune brings that, when there's a song that just inspires awe, or you see a show that inspires awe, and you just feel inspired by the beauty of life. That is kind of the overall influence of Neptune. However, Neptune does, when he's direct, tend to put rose-tinted glasses over us as well. So what happens when he goes retrograde, he takes his energy away from the planet, he withdraws that from our life, and what happens is the rose-coloured glasses come off. So Neptune retrograde, I like to call its reality check time. This is when we start to see where we've just kind of been glossing over possible issues in our lives or allowing things to slide, making excuses or seeing things as being better than they actually are. Classic examples of this is going, oh, my partner just treats me like that. They're busy at work, or they've had a rough day, making excuses for them when you're actually in a substandard relationship. This can also happen at work, where you may actually go, oh, we live in an industry where there's a lot of stress and people don't always have time to be nice and polite or things like that. It could be a kid, it could be any situation of your life. So I think Aquamarine not only bringing in that beautiful watery energy, which will be a little bit lacking with Neptune out of the way, but it will actually help us to recalibrate what Neptune's true desire is. Remember, every retrograde has a major lesson to it. Its true lesson is for you to create a purely, truly beautiful life, rather than convince yourself that, oh, no, I've got the perfect life. Yeah, my partner's a bit of a jerk to me most days. Yeah, I hate my job and the people I work with. But no, it's beautiful. So what it does is it brings all this truth out and allows you to start making changes and go, actually, I do need to kind of sort out my relationships, whatever they may be. I do need to sort out my workplace. I do need to sort out my money situation, all these different things. So this can be quite confronting coming up. And remember that when you hear dates for a retrograde, retrogrades aren't on off. They're a wave, especially with Neptune being watery as well. So I'm even noticing now in some of my relationships and some of my working situations that I've maybe been kidding myself and giving people the benefit of the doubt when maybe I shouldn't. Bringing Aquamarine in and wearing it, putting around your space, popping a tumbled stone in your pillow slip at night to see what dreams it brings up will just help you to realize, how do I recalibrate to work out where things aren't quite right and where I do need to make some changes. And maybe you do need to make some cleansing. And I think what Kyle and Nicholas have talked about is some really good leading in advice to what may happen with Neptune. Now, not only do we have that, where we're going to have these reality checks, but be warned, because we do have a Mercury retrograde happening later in this month as well. Mercury retrogrades, of course, happen quick and fast, and they happen often. And they give us little 3-week check-ins with how good a communicator we are. Now, as we're having these reality checks, that may actually mean that we need to have communication with other people. Be wary that we will have this Mercury retrograde in the sign of the beloved Leo. So what can we expect? Fiery and very sometimes selfish, sometimes narcissistic communication, but also heartfelt as well. So there's going to be a lot of big communication coming out. Leos are renowned also for being really great expressors, not necessarily great listeners. And so even maybe bringing in a bit of, I love Angelite for helping with a bit more listening capability, pairing Angelite and Aquamarine later in the month to allow communication to flow backwards and forwards. So I think July actually offers a really great month for you to recalibrate your life, make your life more beautiful than it is, and have something really healing and honest communication. And I would recommend, if you don't have Aquamarine in your collection now, hurry up and get some. And I would keep it with you throughout July just to help you kind of navigate and find that harmony, precisely about what we talked about what needs to be let go of, but also having that, connecting back in with that spiritual teaching or that personal teaching of how have I brought about this life and the situations now? What have I said? What have I done? Which relationships, which jobs, which financial decisions have I made to get me where I am today? And Aquamarine will wash away what doesn't serve you, but also bring in those lessons of, hey, am I the problem? Maybe I'm the drama. Maybe you are, kind of thing. So it's going to be a really great one to work with in this way. So Kyle, Nicholas gave some really beautiful ways he loves to work with Aquamarine. I know you've got your beautiful Beryl grid, but is there any other ways that you've found Aquamarine could be a really nice way for people to work with throughout July?
I literally wear Aquamarine every single day. This is a crystal plug. Let me just pop it out. You can see a total bit of Aquamarine that I have in my ear every day, and it's balanced with Morganite. And I love wearing Aquamarine and Morganite through periods where I need to just listen to my truth, be in a space that is loving and compassionate, but also with good boundaries. Morganite has such strong boundaries of the heart, and pairing it with Aquamarine, I'm always able to listen to the right truth for me and what I need. And it's been really important over the last few years because I have gone through this period of grief and burnout. I've had to really manage my energy, which I've discussed in the past, and I find this combination all the time harmonizing and balancing for that extremes that I can feel. Or if I'm feeling really burnt out, it will allow me to go, that's how you're feeling, so do less. And say to those around you that you need to do less today. This is how I'm feeling. And it allows you to actually, it allows me to know what I can and can't do, and then to actually express what I can and can't do. It gives comfort in that honesty. And I think that's going to be really important working through this sort of double retrograde on top of each other. If you can have it on you, or just have a piece that you have with you that you remind yourself, boundaries, truth, don't hold back, but also like there's no need to yell and scream and shout. It will help you not sort of get overwhelmed by other people's big emotions and all the, like, maybe there's going to be yelling and screaming, or maybe people will be saying my problem's bigger. It's like, well, we all have problems and this is the truth of it, and I'm a focus on me, and that's okay. Like the whole, like one of my favorite sayings, and it's relevant for many situations, is your lack of preparation is not my problem. Right. And it is something that can come up during these retrogrades, like, oh, I'm running late because of this, and all of this has come up and blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, cool, I have my problems, you have your problems, let's like work together here. Like, this is what I can do, this is what you can do. I'm not taking on more responsibility just because you're not prepared. Right. It's that whole group project thing. Aquamarine really helps to like set the standard of like, I'm contributing what I'm doing, and that's enough. And I'm not going above and beyond. Or maybe I've not been doing enough and it's time to do more. It's time to take bigger steps. It's time to take bigger actions. It's time to have bigger conversations, put on your big person adult pants, and like really start to let your actions speak louder than your words.
Out of curiosity, is there a reason why you wear Aquamarine in one ear and Morganite in the other? Does it matter? Have you made a conscious decision on them?
Yes, energetically, because I work in spirit with my twin sister and my great grandfather, it's like this direct link to be able to hear them in one ear clearly. And so there's no fighting. And so I know who I'm connecting to in spirit when I'm connecting to them. And it's this direct link. And it allows me to be clear, especially when
so is Morganite for your grandmother and sorry, was the grandmother or father?
No, my Morganite is for my twin sister in spirit. and my great grandfather
Great
on my
grandfather.
mother's side. Yeah, it was one of those weird discoveries of like, we don't know who's working with us until like we tap into them. And Aquamarine is my like connection to my great grandfather because he really was not backwards and going forwards. We'll say that as a human, I've come to learn.
Amazing, amazing. Well, we've got a big month ahead. Not only have we got retrogrades, but we also get asked what our favorite crystal is. And next week, I think we're going to be talking about it's definitely in my top three, without a doubt in my top three. So stay tuned for another Crystal Confab next week. We're not going to talk about a crystal. We're going to talk about several crystals, but it's only one crystal. What am I talking about? Only 7 days to find out. We'll see you back then on Crystal Confab. Until then, take care and blessed be.